President Biden, who flew to Israel and hugged their leader, vowing U.S. full support, today called for a ceasefire.
Is the U.S. supporting the hostages for a ceasefire deal?
Why did you? We should have a ceasefire. Not a ceasefire. We should have those hostages released, and then we can talk.
All right, so in the last 3 days, Joe Biden has said Israel should delay ground operations, then Israel should have a ceasefire, then Israel should not have a ceasefire, and then wait until hostages are released, and then we can talk. Joe Biden doesn't have the verbal precision or the backbone to lead our country in a dangerous world. It's now been reported that Joe Biden is forcing the Israelis to delay ground operations, handing a major victory to terrorists. Biden's dragging the war out in Israel like he's dragging the war out in Ukraine. We're hearing the White House wants all of the hostages released from Gaza before the Israeli ground campaign. And Hamas has over 200 hostages and are dripping them out. Last week, 2 out this week, buying time and buying good PR in the Arab world, even in Congress. Meanwhile, the White House doesn't even know how many hostages there are.
Do we have any updates on the plight of any other Americans still being held hostage?
I wish I knew the answers to those, Jonathan. We don't have a great sense of how many more Americans are in the pool.
All we're hearing from the White House is, I don't know, and we're scared. The White House is leaking all over D.C. that they're terrified of this thing tumbling into World War III. It doesn't show strength when our defense secretary broadcasts he's worried.
We're concerned about potential escalation. In fact, what we're seeing is the prospect of a significant escalation of attacks on our troops and our people throughout the region.
You know who should be worried about escalation? Our enemies. And America's top diplomat is telling our enemies exactly what we're worried about.
How concerned are you about Iran trying to escalate this war?
We are concerned. In fact, we expect that there's a likelihood of escalation by Iranian proxies directed against our forces, directed against our personnel. This is not what we want, not what we're looking for. We don't want escalation. We don't want to see a second or third front develop.
So over the last 48 hours, U.S. bases in Iraq and Syria have been attacked by Iranian drones. Hezbollah, backed by Iran, is stepping up attacks against Israel from the north. I thought Biden warned our enemies, don't. Now he's warning Israel, don't. Biden's reportedly holding back Israel from striking Hamas and Hezbollah. And if anybody else was wondering if the United States is running out of weapons, well, the White House just announced we were.
How big is the concern that the U.S. is dangerously low on what it should have for its own defense right now?
Well, of course it's a concern. It's something that we watch very, very closely. And with every single aid package that goes to Ukraine and now Israel, the Department of Defense has to do an assessment to make sure that we can continue to meet our own war plans, our own operational needs.
So Biden's running out of bullets, running out of money, and running his mouth. Here's why we're in this mess. Biden was totally unprepared. Right when he came into office, he pulled most of our air defenses from the Mideast. The Patriot anti-missile batteries disappeared because Biden said the Iranians were good little boys. Now Iranian proxies are firing missiles all over the desert, and Biden's caught with his pants down. Biden's telling Israel, don't launch the ground invasion until we can put our missile defense systems back in the region. Because if this thing escalates, we're not prepared. So Joe's pushing a ceasefire because he didn't see this coming. Just like he didn't see the Taliban taking over Afghanistan, just like he didn't see the Russians or the Chinese or the cartels. Now the terrorists have the clock on their side. They're digging their tunnels deeper. More arms shipments are coming in, and all Israel is doing is launching airstrikes, which then Hamas films, and then so-called civilians crawl out of the rubble and they hand the tape to Al Jazeera, and the Arab world explodes. Mobs swarm our embassies. Mobs swarm our cities. The squad calls for ceasefires. And the ceasefires arrive. Biden's delivering the ceasefire that the squad's called for. Biden wants to stop talk, and shower both sides with